Hi, my name is Gary Harmon from Harmon Speaks, and I wanted to talk to you just a moment today about why we're doing this project. Several years ago, my wife and I started our family, and we have 2 children. And our children were born into a world where they had to figure out why their dad looked a little different from everybody else. I was born as a result of amniotic band syndrome. I don't have more than 2 fingers on my left hand, I have no right hand, and I have no feet. Now, my children were fine with that because I was the only dad they knew. They got used to it very quickly, and it was never an issue. As a matter of fact, my younger son used to enjoy tickling the bottom of my prosthetic leg and see if it made me laugh. But when they got older and we would go out into the world, they could see how other people react, and it made them a little bit nervous. And so I never noticed this until I had children. And I started thinking what we need to do is find a way to help people in the world understand that those of us with physical or intellectual differences are still human, still can be a part of the world and not be scary. So I started a 3-pronged approach. I do these videos, I've written 2 books, and I do speaking with organizations who want to learn more about people with disabilities. You can find this on www.harmonspeaks.com. Please get in touch with me. I'd like us to get to know each other a little better. Thank you. Hi, welcome back to Harmon Speaks. This is your old pal Gary Harmon. We're back on the air again. We took a pandemic break because I turned out to be one of those old people that was at risk. And my doctor contacted me and she said, get under a heavy piece of furniture and don't get out until I call you. And so I did that, and finally they gave everybody in the country a shot, and then it was my turn. And I kept calling my doctor. I thought I was at risk. And she said, you will be if you call me one more time. And so I finally got the shot, and I hope we're all going to be healthy. My whole family got their shot. If you haven't, please go and get the shot. Let's make this country healthy again. I'm ready to get back to work, and I hope you are too. Tonight, we are starting back up with our series, and we're going to have a show about epilepsy tonight. And I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine. This is Jessi Scott. Hi, Jessi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. I'm really happy to have you here on the show.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's my pleasure. She won't say that when she doesn't get a check at the end, but that's okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about it. I'm going to be honest first and tell you I know nothing about epilepsy.
That's okay.
And fortunately, you're a nurse, so can you help me understand it a little bit?
Absolutely. I'm not as great as a nurse. I'm just a medical assistant.
Okay. Same thing.
But thank you.
Close enough.
So epilepsy, I was diagnosed in my later years, in my early 20s. Mm-hmm. And basically it's a disability with a firing off in your brain, mm-hmm. that some signals get crossed and your brain doesn't know how to react, so you basically have a seizure, which seizures can look different.
Right.
There are some that you can't even tell. There's no movement. Right. Really, you just kind of space out, and you look straight ahead, and you're kind of out of it for 5 minutes.
Right.
And then there are ones that you'll have little tremors on, different parts of your body.
Okay.
And those are petit mal seizures.
Okay.
Focal seizures are the ones that you just kind of zone out.
And what are they called?
Focal seizures.
Focal, okay. Mm-hmm. All right.
And grand mal seizures, which are the ones that I generally have, are the ones that you're used to seeing on TV or the movies. They're the violent ones that people are usually more aware of when they think of epilepsy. That's what they think of. which generally is what I usually have, is the grand malls, and I'll occasionally have the petite malls. But, you know, some people have triggers that allow them to kind of get a warning beforehand.
Do you have those?
I've never had
Is that right?
the warnings or the auras.
Do you remember yours after they happened?
I don't at all.
Okay.
It's honestly, it's a weird mind trick that happens, because when I come back to, sometimes I will have been unconscious for 5-6 minutes.
Okay.
And when I come to, I've had no idea that I've lost any time at all. It feels like I've just blinked an eye, and I'm back in the conversation that I wasn't before.
Okay.
But everybody around me is disturbed and
Do you
upset.
ever fall on the floor or anything like that?
Yes, I've fallen. I've broken my foot.
Really?
I've split my tongue open. I have cracked my head open. You know, gotten bumps and scrapes on my face and elbows and those kinds of things. So I've definitely sustained more brain damage from having a seizure too.
Okay.
So generally, but luckily it's been a while since I've had one.
Sure. Well, that's good. That's good. Now, if you have a seizure and our viewers are in the room with you, what can they do to help protect your health?
Really, the biggest thing you can do is try to lay that person on the ground and make sure their head doesn't hit the ground.
Okay.
It's false information, because I remember being young and hearing that you wanted to put something in their mouth to press their tongue down, and you don't want to do that.
Because they'll get choked on that, right?
Either that, or the person having a seizure will bite your fingers off.
Okay. I don't have any to spare. I'm not going to help you, Jessi. You're on your own.
That's okay. I'm used to that too.
Okay. Neil says, I have a few extra. Okay, but anyway. You didn't think this was going to be serious. I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
No, I'm glad. Since I don't get warnings, I was very lucky to have a dog that was able to sense my seizures.
Okay.
We had already had him. His name is Sheldon. He's a little pit bull. And he was able to tell me before I would have the seizure.
Right.
So he would either get down on the ground and start, kind of digging around or barking at me or trying to get my attention somehow. And if I didn't pay attention to him, then he'd start really trying to get up in my face. And when I seize, he'll kind of splay his body over mine and just lay on me until I stop seizing, and then kiss me and lick my face and try to rouse me afterwards. And there have been a few times where I've been on my own when I was first diagnosed and didn't have the seizures as under control as they are now. And, I'd be walking in the neighborhood by myself with him, and I've come to on the side of the road with him just kind of standing over me, making sure nobody's coming around and that I'm okay. And then he'll kind of help me get off the ground and get home, because after a seizure, it feels like you've run a 5K marathon.
I can imagine.
It's your whole body is just exhausted, tense. A lot of times I'll be physically sick from it for a day or two.
So, in what way? Sick in what way?
Nauseated, vomiting, kind of like the aches and chills that you would feel like if you had the flu. But I think that part is more just from all the muscles being so tense for so long.
So do you still have this kind of dog?
I do.
Do you?
He's not happy being retired.
Yeah.
I went back to work. I finally got my seizures pretty much under control. And I went back to work in 2016. And so I retired him before I went back to work.
I see.
And he was not very happy about that.
I understand that. So how did you get them under control?
We found the right cocktail of medications, which took us years. When I first started off, my physician at the time had told me to start a very high dose of this seizure medication called Depakote. And usually with those medications, especially epilepsy medications, you've got to wean onto those. And he didn't have me do that. He had me start off on high dose 4 times a day. And I ended up being allergic to that medication. And so that kind of set me back for a while. Like, I couldn't walk, I couldn't speak. It was like I'd had a stroke. And so that took me several months to kind of get back from that. And it took us, let's see, I think I started having seizures, it was 2013. So it took us about 3 years to get the right combination of meds. And I was having at least 2 seizures a month.
And how frequent are they now?
Not frequent at all, luckily. It's been about a year since I've had one.
That's fantastic.
I do still have a lot of what we call petit mal seizures, where I'll have, these kind of things, or I'll be sitting there and my whole body will just kind of jerk a few times, but I'm not out of it. I know that it's happening. So it's been really nice to have some independence back, because when I was first diagnosed, I lost all that independence.
Can you drive if you're still having seizures?
You're not supposed to. No.
I feel a story coming on.
You can, as long as you're seizure free for 6 months in Tennessee, you can drive. So I will, occasionally drive if I have to, but for the most part, my fiance Chris is.
He's a driver.
He is. He's amazing. He picks me up, takes me wherever I need. He doesn't complain about it at all, which I hate asking for help, so it's hard for me to even ask to, hey, I want to go get some makeup, or going to do this, but he always makes me feel like he would love to do it with me, so.
Well, there you go.
I've got a special one with that guy.
I think you probably do. My wife will not listen to this episode.
Oh, you gotta go.
You never go shopping with me? No, no, I don't. No, I do not. But anyway, I would if she needed me. She doesn't need me. Well, have you ever had people respond to you weirdly because of this?
I have. People usually immediately are a little intimidated by it. People are usually surprised or shocked than anything when I tell them I have epilepsy. And like you said earlier, there's not a whole lot of knowledge about it right now. So people a lot of times confuse it with narcolepsy. I have that happen quite often. But for the most part, people just tend to become more concerned around me, more aware of surroundings, and if I have a seizure, 99% of the time people almost immediately ask me, what do I do if you have a seizure? Which makes me feel much more comfortable knowing that they're thinking about that.
That's great. I think that's a good thing.
Because if I don't have to volunteer that information, if they just ask it, it's always a little less awkward.
Sure. I understand that. I always wondered, having a disability that's extremely visible, I always wondered what challenges you have when it isn't visible, that no one would know if they didn't see you have a seizure. So
people think that I'm just someone that would not have any issues out in the real world. They wouldn't think, normally people don't think that I have any kind of disability. So if anything, the response I get is more shocked. And a lot of times I'll have people kind of surprised that I'm doing as much as I am doing now in compared to where I was when I was first diagnosed. Because when I was first diagnosed, I couldn't do anything. You can't take a bath you can't go swimming,
Right.
you can't use scissors,
Right.
so I couldn't cook. You know, you're not allowed to use knives. You're not supposed to go on ladders.
This sounds like my life. I do absolutely nothing.
I remember when I was first diagnosed, I was actually a scribe for a retina specialist.
Okay.
And I had been doing that for about 13 years. And when I developed the seizures, I was no longer able to do that because
Right.
we were doing things like retinal injections and removals of eyes and things like that.
You're scaring me.
And so I had to be super steady with everything.
Right.
And so I lost that job.
Okay.
And I immediately tried looking for another job. And I found one, which was actually at Bed Bath & Beyond, which I was really excited about because I was ready for those discounts. But when I went to my neurologist, she told me, she goes, you know, you can't do that. And I go, why not? And she goes, well, because they're going to have you stocking things, so you're going to have to walk up ladders. You're going to have to use scissors to open products. She's like, you can't do that until you're at least stable. And at that point, it had been probably about 2 months since I was first diagnosed. So that that really got to me, not being able to work. I was out of work for about 5 years.
Right.
And I was so bored. And
Sure.
I felt like I was more of a burden than anything else because I was making no money for our family. I wasn't really contributing in the way I was used to contributing. And so I actually taught myself how to draw and paint and started selling art and doing murals and things like that, which I didn't make much money doing that, but it occupied my mind and kind of got me out of the depressive state that I was in. From being super independent, you know, having your first job when you're 13, to not being able to have a job, not being able to drive, you can't soak in a bath by yourself, you know, all these things that I had taken for granted before, I couldn't do anymore. And so it was really kind of eye-opening and really made me appreciate the smaller things in life that I hadn't before. Because you never know when, you know, that one seizure will be your last one and you won't wake up from it. So that's always something kind of in the back of my mind.
Wow, that sounds scary.
It is scary. I try not to think about that too much, but I also kind of have to because I have to be aware of where I am and what I'm doing and even who's next to me. You know, am I going to be next to somebody that will know how to help me in that situation?
Was helping you bring out your art the major benefit you saw from having this, or is there anything else that you discovered through this? I always find that disabilities help you sharpen something else.
Absolutely.
So what did it help you sharpen?
Really, I think more my compassion for other people and what they've been through, and empathy for other people who may have disabilities that you can't see or you can see. You know, it kind of gave me a different perspective than I'd had before. And really just appreciating things I hadn't appreciated before. You know, because you never know when you won't be able to anymore. So that I feel like that's probably what changed the most with me is my outlook on life and on how I problem solve and kind of work my way around the obstacles from having epilepsy, which sometimes I can completely forget about it, to be honest.
Sure.
Chris never does. He's always like, he's always right there. He was the one that was with me when I had my first seizure.
Is that right?
And he actually thought I was dead because after you have a seizure, generally you're unconscious for seconds to minutes. After 5 minutes, then you start to develop brain damage. And I had been right at the 4 mark 4-minute mark. And he'd never seen a seizure before in his life. I don't remember much of that night at all. I just remember we were there, we were talking, and I wake up and I'm looking up at him, and he's in this state of panic, and I can immediately tell something's wrong. And he's just like, we're going to the hospital. I'm like, why? What happened? I was like, what do you mean? He was like, are you kidding me?
Right.
You've just had a seizure and you've been unconscious. I thought you were dead. He was just, a wreck. And so I ended up going to the hospital, and they ran all the tests, the EEGs and the MRIs, and came to find out that I had a grand mal seizure, which they think that my neurologist thinks I've had epilepsy my whole life. But in my late 20s, I sustained some brain damage, and they think that that's kind of what kick-started the grand mal seizures. Was after I had that brain damage, then I started having the seizures, the big ones.
Right. Wow. So it was always probably there, but that brought it out.
Exactly. Kind of like opened the floodgates.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's great you had somebody right beside you the whole time.
It really was.
That's great.
I was very lucky.
Yeah. I don't on this show usually endorse boyfriends, but he sounds like a hell of a guy.
He is.
I'm really glad for you. That's really wonderful.
Thank you.
People with epilepsy, that's just something they have to deal with.
Yeah.
But they're normal people. They're
Exactly.
Just like everyone else.
Right.
You would never know.
Right.
I mean, you can live your life normally for the most part. You just have to be a little bit more precautious, but it definitely doesn't change who you are as a person inside, except maybe make you a little bit stronger in certain areas.
Right.
It's not a life-ending diagnosis.
Right.
You can still live your life and do everything you want to do. It doesn't have to hold you back.
Sure.
For sure.
Okay.
Which, when I first developed it, I thought it did.
Right.
I think I used that sometimes as an excuse when I wasn't prepared to do something.
Right.
So I've kind of had to get over that and learn how to just do it.
Right.
What you need to do and what you want to do. And try not to think about that holding you back.
Right. Well, that's wonderful. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story with us. I hope this will help people understand epilepsy a little more. And if they're around someone that has it, they'll know a little bit more about what to expect.
Yes.
And can be a better friend to them. So thank you for coming on the show and talking about that.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I want to thank you for joining us today. We are working very hard to build what we do here. This is a 3-pronged effort. We have the videos, of course, that we want you to watch. Also, I have 2 books on my website that I'd like to invite you to kind of get. And thirdly, I do public speaking. I can talk to businesses, church groups, scouting groups, whatever group you want to talk about issues with disabilities. I would love to come and talk with you. So please let me know. The website is harmonspeech.com. Get in contact with me. Let me know what you need, and I look forward to working with you. And I want to say a thank you to my buddy Neil, who's still running the camera and does a great job. I'm glad to be back at work with him. We're going to gain weight again, and I look forward to it. Thank you for joining us, and you have a good night.